So today, Ali and I wanted to share with you some thoughts that we have been having over the last week or so around our language and the way we talk about our dogs and what's helpful and what isn't. And the heading of today's video is No Dogs Are Naughty. So I wanted to just pass over to you, Ali. You can start us off and tell me what you think about that.
Actually, it is quite funny because I was talking to one of my friends in rescue over the weekend, and we were catching up about a certain dog, and he has just been homed from a foster scenario to a new home scenario, and the foster scenario described him as the naughtiest dog that she's ever come across. So very apt that we're talking about dogs as naughty. I think, what does it mean? What do we mean when we say, "Oh, this dog's naughty"? I think it means disobedient is often something that means that the dog's naughty. Stubborn is a word that's used that comes up quite a lot, or willful. And so it is interesting to think about, because I think it comes from traditional thinking that a good dog will naturally obey a human owner, which is quite interesting to think about, isn't it? Because if you think in nature, in the natural world, can you think of any species that obeys another species? Like, take humans out of it and just think of the animal world. I can't think of one.
Oh, neither can I. And actually, would it not be the polar opposite? Because oftentimes there would be prey predator
Exactly.
situations going on.
Obedience doesn't make sense, does it, in the natural world? Yet humans of this traditional way of thinking, would have a belief that dogs should obey them, otherwise they're naughty. And I think that also happens in the horse world too. That's an expectation of horses as well, but not cats.
Interestingly, not cats. I mean, yeah, although, and you heard it here first, I do think that is changing, sadly. And I do think in the next 10 or 20 years, I saw recently a cat with a lead on. I mean, where that's going to end, I've got no idea. And we do also have inside cats. Sometimes maybe just specific breeds. I'm not a cat person. I don't know. But yes, if a dog brings in a dead mouse or rabbit, it's, oh my God, what's wrong with this dog? It's being really naughty. It's maybe it's going to be aggressive. Whereas a cat brings in a mouse, it's like, oh, that cat, why did it do that? And then you take it out of its mouth and you throw it away and you move on with your life.
Exactly. Yeah. So dogs actually get quite a rum deal in our human world. I also want just briefly, in terms of terminology, because we're talking about language and how to describe and terminology, etc. Do you own Fudge? Like, do I own Ludo? It kind of makes me laugh, actually, to think about that from his perspective. I can imagine him being like, I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly.
So for me, it's like, there's not an ownership between me and my dogs. It's a relationship. It's a companionship. It's family, and we don't expect obedience from family. We work with our family, don't we? We work with our friends and our companions. We communicate together. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's this thing about understanding them and understanding where they're coming from and what they need when they're in our world.
Yeah, what they need and why they need what they need, which is usually different to what it looks like from a human perspective. And
Yeah,
look at some examples of naughty behavior, like, oh, that's a naughty dog. It pulls on the lead all the time. Okay, so if we were to flip that and say, well, actually, the dog is just talking to us, it's a really good opportunity to listen to what they're saying and do something about it.
mm,
And when we flip it like that, then the space in which our action is coming from is much kinder, it's much calmer, it's much more curious. It's not like, I need a solution to this right this second because this dog is really bad, naughty, insert whatever.
mm.
Um, and I think once we settle back down and go, oh, it's pulling on the lead, it's just telling us it needs to get there first. Okay, why does it need to get there first? Because it needs to check the area out. Everything they do it for us. And when we see that, it just changes everything.
It really does. And that's a really good point to make, is that the behavior is telling us something rather than just being naughty for naughty's sake or trying to annoy us, which it might sometimes feel.
Yeah, I mean, it does annoy us, but it's
It
not their.
does. They've not got a verbal language like we have, so they can't explain and, talk and communicate in the way that we can. So how do they communicate what they're comfortable with, what they need? Is everything about their behavior. What else? The sort of behaviors that could be described as naughty: incessant barking, growling and biting, no recall, chewing, destruction, jumping up, anything like that really, digging up the garden,
Yeah.
getting
Oh,
into everything. That's the sort of thing that dogs will, those are the sort of behaviors that will give dogs the name of bad dogs, disobedient, naughty dogs. Whereas actually all of those behaviors are telling us something. There's some level of discomfort or feeling of lack of safety.
yeah, lack of safety. And the other thing that, we hear a lot is that these behaviors are coming from a place of boredom or restlessness. And I don't believe that to be true either. I think it's more serious than that. It's about safety.
Mm,
It's more serious and also simpler
mm,
because it's really food, water, safety.
yeah.
And when we kind of drill it down to that, to just the safety, then again, it becomes a lot more obvious, doesn't it? Because you're not getting tied up in all the human things that are, complicating the situation usually.
Yeah. I'm not sure I've ever worked with a dog that I've seen as being bored. They may have been described as that, because I think sometimes it can look a bit like that when a dog is just going from one thing to the next, getting itself into trouble. It might look like they're trying to find entertainment or something, but actually it's usually about anxiety, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a question. They're usually it's just a question. It's just saying, well, what are you going to do about this now? What are you going to do about that? And what are you going to do about that? It's just constant questions, which is exhausting for the
Yeah.
human owner. There's no two ways about it. And if you think that the dog's doing it just to annoy you, then obviously that's not going to make for a really nice, harmonious home environment. It just, escalates from there.
Mm.
So I suppose I guess what we're saying is, if anybody's watching this and thinking about their dog, it's just ask yourselves the question, could it be something else? Could it be that this dog, or my dog, is trying to share something with me?
Yes. And those behaviors that we've mentioned that could be described as, not good, they're all actually natural behaviors. It's just that it doesn't always fit into our human worlds. It's not always wanted in our more civilized human society.
That's for another conversation, Ali.
Gone deep.
Yeah.
And all of those behaviours that we might see as annoying, they all serve a purpose in the dog's mind.
Absolutely. Yeah, they all serve a purpose. I was just speaking to someone not a couple of hours ago about separation anxiety, where the dog had been fine, able to be left. And then just recently they left, and the neighbor told them that the dog, the minute they left, was howling. Various different octaves was the description of howling, which is heart-wrenching. And when you realize that actually they're just trying to call you back, then it's no longer confusing. It's like, oh, well, of course, if the dog thinks that the owner has gone out and is going to get into trouble and is being putting themselves in danger, there's not really much else left for the dog to do apart from to howl and to call them back. It just
brings them back to safety.
Yeah, come back to safety. They don't realize that they got in a car and went so far away that they're not going to hear the howling, because obviously if they were free living, then the pack would hear them.
And maybe that same dog, maybe not in this scenario, but another dog in that similar scenario would defecate in the house or pee in the house. And that's just another way of trying to help the family know where to come back to. It's scenting their domain and helping them come back. It's if we really get into, the natural dog and their behaviors, then everything becomes easier to understand. And we can see that they are just desperately trying to help us. They've just got some of their information wrong. Yeah.
Must be such a confusing world for them.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And so, and things can change. I was going to mention this. So poor old Ludo's had some itchy issues for about a week. So he hasn't been feeling his best. And over the last 3 or 4 days, this chair squeaks. Mm-hmm. And he's been jumping up. So if I move, turn the chair around and walk out the room, he's been sort of jumping up ready to be with me, which is really unusual for him.
Yeah.
And I can only assume that he's feeling a little bit, off colour. It's making him question things because of his health. Yeah. I'm also limping around a little bit. I've hurt my knee, so he's noticed that. So he probably thinks, does she need extra help from me today? Yeah. And so it's relevant to mention because it's worth me observing it, noting it, but I don't pay any attention to it. And I know that if I don't pay any attention to it, at some point when he's ready to, he'll stop doing it again. He'll go back to his normal self, which is more like this.
I was about to say, I think he's gone back already because he didn't move there. I think
when I'm creaking my chair. Yeah. So, but if your dog changes or does some behavior that surprises you or you don't really want, I don't really want him to jump up out of sleep and follow me out of the room. The last thing I want to do is pay attention to it, because that will give him some level of information about whether he's going to do it again or not. What was that phrase we talked about briefly before we came online? Is it accidental attention?
Accidental attention, yes.
Yeah. Really nice piece of terminology, which is really good for us humans to talk about, because we do it so much. We accidentally give them attention for the wrong things.
And that confuses them.
Yeah. And encourages them to do it again.
Yeah.
So if we don't want the behavior, let's not give them that accidental attention, or indeed
intentional
attention.
Intentional attention. Yeah. It's probably worth pointing out it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative, it's attention. So even just saying no is attention, which will ironically encourage the behavior.
Yeah.
It might
I call that, I describe
more.
that, it's saying no when you're being jumped on. I describe that as attention with added adrenaline, because you don't want it to happen. So you're saying, no, stop it. And so you're giving it energy. And that's just attention, with more adrenaline. So the dog's going to do it again.
And it is difficult from a human perspective. I can see this because oftentimes the dog will stop doing it for a moment. So it looks like it works. But of course, then they do it again. And then we say, no, and then they do it again. And what we're looking for in dog listening is that understanding, is that going deeper. So the dog has time to think that that's not a good idea in the first place. And therefore, there's no need for no's, yeses, or anything else. You know, we're just living together in a much more harmonious way.
Yeah. That's lovely, because we get them to choose their behavior and from a more balanced state. So actually they're choosing to come to us when we recall them. They're choosing to walk next to us on the lead rather than fighting against us. So yeah, what we're trying to do is create a willing partnership where, you know, there's respect between the two parties, rather than one species expecting something from a different species. Let's just find out what each other needs. And
yeah, it's almost like just finding the common ground. What's the common ground here? And then go from there. That's beautiful. Well, I think we are going to finish up today. I think we've said everything we want to say for today on there are no naughty dogs. Thank you very much for your time, Ali. And we will be back, I'm sure, in the next couple of weeks with whatever else takes our fancy. If you're watching this and you have a topic that you would like us to cover, then please do message us. We'll put our details in the comments underneath this video, so you can
put a question in the comments. Maybe we'll,
yeah, you can put a question in the comments.
We'll try and pick that up, won't we, Julie, with our really excellent admin and social media
technical skills. We'll look for that. Excellent. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Julie.